I've argued that we ought to use the word, instead of artificial intelligence, fake intelligence,
Yeah.
because it is pretending to be intelligent when it's not. Like, what is human intelligence? We have critical thinking skills. I mean, we can understand things, we can project things, we can use information from one domain to apply it to a different domain. We can do logical reasoning. And these compute text generators don't do any of that. I mean, they don't even try to. They don't even try to distinguish between truth and falsity. They don't try to figure out logical arguments. They can put together words of some other logical argument that somebody else has made in the past,
Right.
but coming up with their own logical argument.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Gary N. Smith. Let me tell you about this incredible dude, what he's been up to. He's a prolific author, and he is the Fletcher Jones Professor of Economics at Pomona College in Claremont, California. He spent much of his career illuminating the ways in which statistics and data are misunderstood and manipulated and often misused. His book, Standard Deviation, Flawed Assumptions, Tortured Data, and Other Ways to Lie with Statistics, was a London Times Book of the Week. He's also extensively written about finance, including some eye-opening stock market analysis. He's authored something, I think, like 16 books, over 100 academic papers, and 7 software programs on economics, finance, and statistics. His work's been featured in many, many mainstream media outlets, including New York Times, Wired, CNBC, Scientific American, Forbes, to name a few. So I first came across Gary through his more recent commentary on the state of AI on Saloon.com. And he's got a somewhat divergent point of view, which we're going to talk about. And his latest book is now available on Amazon. And it's called Distrust, Big Data, Data Torturing, and the Assault on Science. Fantastic title. And it's a very compelling read. I highly recommend it. Gary, thank you so much for being in, man. I'm so grateful for your time. Sorry we had some technical difficulties in the beginning.
No worries. Thanks for the kind words.
Very welcome. So let's dive right in, brother.
Sure.
I want to talk about everything is coming to a crescendo right now, if that's possible, with AI, and you have people calling for, a moratorium on it. And it's just a lot going on with tech titans like Elon Musk and Steve, how do you say his last name? Wozniak?
Yeah,
that's how you say
it.
And others, they're now endorsing a 6-month pause, moratorium on development. And you have a kind of an unusual view on the potential of AI, which actually is more akin to my personal beliefs as well. And you describe it as overpromising and underdelivering. So I wanted to ask you to walk us through what that means, because I think your story of like what happened with IBM's Watson when it was hired to cure cancer is a great place to start, and then you could take us up to where we are now.
Sure. I actually want to start in 1956 when there was this conference at Dartmouth University, and they brought together all these very luminary people, and they coined the term artificial intelligence. And they all started talking about within a few years, computers would be able to do anything a human could do. And people started worrying about computers are going to take away our jobs and so on. Well, 1956, that was a long time ago, and we're still waiting. And people have been saying, like every few years or so, somebody comes up with another that AI is about to surpass humans, and humans will soon be redundant, and computers are going to take over the world and get rid of humans because we're unnecessary, and blah, 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 blah. And that's the overpromise. And the underdeliver is they started off thinking, what's the human brain? It inputs information, it outputs results. Well, that's what computers do. So why can't computers mimic the human brain? And the thing is, the human brain turned out to be a lot smarter and a lot less easy to understand than people thought. People thought it was easy, and it's very, very hard. And so some really, really smart people tried to write computer programs that would mimic the human brain, and they just couldn't get anywhere because the brain is so powerful and mysterious. And so instead they went off in these other directions, which is, how can we make money? And it's like spell checkers and search engines and statistical calculators and things like that. And they sort of abandoned the search for mimicking the human brain. And then just this past, I guess it was November, ChatGPT was released, which is a large language model, LLM, which people have been working on for a long time. And they released it to the public for public scrutiny. And it just blew everybody away because you type in something, some conversational thing, some question, whatever you want, and it'll give a lightning response, which sounds super intelligent. And it sounds like it came from a human. It's like you're talking with somebody who's really smart, a lot smarter than you are.
Right.
and they're speaking in perfect English or whatever language you're using. They have good grammar, it's coherent, it's persuasive, it's authoritative, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And it's just magical. And then, of course, once they released it for public testing, people started they couldn't look under the hood. It's all a mystery how it happens. But people started testing it, and they started finding out that it is not perfect. And indeed, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenMind, has said, this is not perfect. This is not ready for prime time. And it shouldn't be used for anything that has serious consequences. And it's still a work in progress. And the problem is, what it is a text generator. And so it's been trained on huge mountains of words. And it's been also subsequently been poked and prodded and tweaked by human handlers to try and give more factually correct answers. But all it does is generate text. And it has no idea what any of the words that it inputs means, no idea what any of the words it outputs means. And so it is it's a fragile thing. It's an unreliable thing. And will sometimes give just total BS, but give it in a very authoritative manner. I'll give you an example. I did this morning. You want me to get an example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let me go. Okay, so this one I've done several times, and I'm just amazed they haven't fixed it up because they have human handlers who go through, who monitor what the results are from ChatGPT, and they tweak it when it gets off base.
Right.
And so this one is, how many bears have the Russians sent into space? And it just keeps getting this one wrong. And so I asked it this morning, and it said, the answer is no, of course, none. The Russians have sent a total of 5 bears into space. The first bear was named Kotnik, was 1969 on the space guy, blah, blah. And it goes on and on and on, like it is, like it knows everything, and you're just an idiot for knowing this.
Like,
and then I asked for some references, and it gives me references. It gives me websites, and the websites are totally fictitious. They don't exist.
What?
The articles they give don't exist. Yeah. And I also asked it this morning to write a bio of myself. And so I said, write a bio of Gary Smith, professor of economics at Pomona College. So that kind of narrows it down. There's only one of me. So,
right.
I mean, Gary Smith is a common name, but
how is the bio?
Professor of economics. Well, it says, I'm a prominent economist and professor of economics at Pomona College. So it got that part right because I gave it to it. That was part of the prompt. Then it says he was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I was born and raised in Southern California, so I got that part wrong.
Wow.
Received my undergraduate degree in mathematics from Occidental College. I've never been to Occidental College.
Oh my God.
Went on to earn his PhD in economics from Yale University. That part's right. In 1976, well, that part's wrong. It was 1971. After completing his PhD, he moved to Williams College, where he spent over 2 decades as a professor of economics from 1980 to 2001. All that is complete fabrication. Not a single word of that is true.
Wow.
During this time, he also served as a visiting professor at several other universities, including University of California, Berkeley, and the London School of Economics. Completely wrong. It just goes on and on with this. Because it doesn't know it doesn't know whether what it says is true or false. All it does is in its vast database. Here's some words.
It doesn't have like truth parameters, so it's wow.
It has no. Yeah. And so it has the human handlers who go in and will fix it up when it says things that's obviously nuts. It'll try. The human handlers will train it to get those right. But you ask it something new. Where did you go to college?
I went to Hartwick College in Oneonta, New York.
Well, I looked up your bio and it said you went to the Tisch School of Arts at NYU.
No. I went to the acting studio and drama school. I auditioned
for
Tisch.
NYU, but it wasn't the Tisch School.
No, I was in New York
Okay.
City. It got me within a 3-mile
Yeah.
radius.
Where
Wow.
were you born and raised? Where were you
Allentown.
born
Well,
and
I was
raised?
born in Allentown, but I was raised in Bangor, Pennsylvania.
It says you
Which,
were born and raised in New York City.
no, that's
ChatGPT this morning said you were born and raised. So this is why
wow.
it's a well Altman says. I mean, people who know about these things say you can't use it for things which have meaningful consequences, where somebody might live or die,
Yeah.
somebody might be fired from a job, or somebody might be sent to prison. Something where the consequences of giving bad advice are serious. You shouldn't use it. Now, things like you write some computer code and then you try and fix it up, or you
Yeah.
write a paper and you try and fix it up, or you like to play around with it, entertainment, ask it questions and see what it says. I
Yeah.
mean, that stuff is fine because the consequence, recommend a movie for me, and it gives a bad
Right.
recommendation. So what,
Yeah.
But
Something
should you
inconsequential.
get this job? And it says no, something that's inconsequential.
Yeah, or use
And
it
the
like
other
a
thing,
magic 8 ball. You know,
yeah,
should I go out on that date
it's
tonight?
really really terrible at predicting the future. And what it's been trained on is the past, and
Mm,
so it can give historical stuff, historical data, stuff like that, which most of the time is right. Sometimes it's wrong.
yeah.
But you ask it to predict interest rates or something like that, or predict stock prices. It has no idea what to do because it doesn't have any
Wow.
mechanism for doing that.
I mean, it's a souped
Uh,
up algorithm. Is it not? Is it not? Is it not just a very complex algorithmic program which uses
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, but that's people confuse
Neural
people
networks and
they confuse and they love doing this. It's like, did you try the new AI program? I'm like, that's an
yeah,
algorithm program, man. You know what I mean? Like that's not AI. It's
yeah.
not thinking on its own, or if you want to call it thinking.
There's no thinking whatsoever.
No,
The
like
one thing it's really, really good at also, which is really terrifying, is generating disinformation. And
yeah,
so there are bad actors
that's
around the
scary.
world.
My God.
And so there are bad actors around the world, some in the United States, but also some in Russia and in North Korea and Iran, who send out what's called a firehood of falsehoods, send out all these social media things to try and undermine faith in the government and society and stuff like that. And they have these people working 24, well, they work in shifts, 8 hour shifts, but
Yeah,
24 hours a day generating this propaganda. And ChatGPT can do it so much faster
my
and so
God.
much more convincingly. And that's part of the reason for the moratorium is people are really worried about the internet and social media just being flooded with
Yeah.
all sorts of garbage. And
I mean, I saw one news report that said something like the apology letter that was written to these parents who there was an incident at a school. It might have even been like a shooting, but it didn't. I don't think it was a big one because it didn't make big headlines. But the apology letter that was
yeah,
sent out, the school had to apologize for using ChatGPT to write its apology letter. And I'm like,
right, right, right.
I understand we're all busy, okay, but you know, come
Yeah.
on. I mean, it
The
doesn't
other,
take
the
long to
other,
write a paragraph to some mourning parents. Do you really need
yeah,
to? I mean, just to write the request into ChatGPT, you're halfway there. Just finish it off and write the letter yourself. My
yeah.
God,
That's why give it the instructions. You might as well write it. Another
yeah,
thing that's scary about it is you start engaging in a conversation with it, and you start feeling like it's human, and you're conversing with a human, and then it sometimes goes off the rails, and it starts
yeah,
telling you should leave your wife and go, or you should commit suicide, or you should quit your job, and it sounds like a confidant who's giving you valuable information
yeah,
because it's smarter than you, right? And in fact, it's just generating this fire hose of falsehoods, generating this garbage, and
yeah. I mean,
that's scary stuff.
but people are the. I think the more disconnected we get with Mother Nature and whatever you hold to be sacred, about some people are believe in a higher power, other people don't, but some people love nature, and whatever plugs you into kind of yourself and what's important. We see our young people straying more and more away from that important what's the word, connection. And
Yeah,
I
the
mean, you
bonding.
see it, people I don't know if you believe in this kind of stuff, but these kids get in trouble on the internet already, latching on to people they don't
Yeah.
know. These kids are, these kids are
Yeah.
playing with a Ouija board and getting in trouble somehow. You know what I mean? Like, so many horror movies have been inspired by kids playing with the Ouija board. I'm like, why is it still for sale? I don't care whether you believe it or not. These kids, somehow they keep getting in trouble with it.
Yeah.
Let's take it out, take it off the shelves, maybe. How about that? But it's just scary when you
Oh,
think about how lost, some of the young people are in our society.
it's also like, they talk about kids say, why do I have to learn how to write? I'll have ChatGPT do all my writing for me. And
Yeah.
I think part of the reason you want to learn to write is you learn from writing. When you write something, you have to think of what you're saying. You have
Mm-hmm.
to try and understand it. You try and explain your point of view. But I think another thing is it's a bonding experience. When I write something to you, I'm telling you something about myself and my
Mm-hmm.
feelings and my beliefs. And then you respond and you tell me you agree with me or disagree with me. And I learn more about you and we kind of bond for
Yeah.
as long as we're respectful. But I got my chat GPT is going to talk to your chat GPT. We're losing a whole lot of human connection there.
That's 9.0. That's Chat GPT 9.0. It'll do all your talking for
Oh,
you.
no, there's actually an internet website right now where they got two famous philosophers. It's called The Infinite Conversation, and they just go on talking to each other forever. It's all
It's all
ChatGPT,
program.
and it's been
Wow.
it's they're just free flowing, and they're just talking and talking and talking. And I think something's lost if we
Yeah.
if we don't talk to each other. Like you say, go outside. I mean, get off your computer, go shake hands with somebody, go play pickleball with somebody,
Yeah,
go
man.
to a restaurant with somebody.
There's something to be said about that human connection and that connection with nature. I mean, that's what, we were born here on this planet to this planet. And I think it's important, whenever I get stuck in a rut, if I go for a walk or I go outside, or sometimes just sit with my dogs on the porch and, you just kind of get present with what's going on now and you feel better,
Yeah.
and if we don't teach our young people to do that, they're going to be lost. I mean, we see a lot of confusion and mental and emotional health issues with kids. And what's crazy is these kids aren't even experiencing an abnormal amount of trauma. They're just growing up in this society, and that in and
Yeah.
of itself is doing what normally it takes, a completely dysfunctional household with a few alcoholics and abusive uncles to take care of. These kids are showing the same kind of symptoms, right? I mean, I'm like, Jesus,
Yeah.
why is this
Now,
young lady?
social media will do it for you.
Yeah, social media is another one,
It'll
it's
warp you in all sorts of ways.
and more than ever, the kids have to be installed with such fortitude and foundation that they can weather this kind of storm of, I mean, algorithms are algorithms, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
you know the story of um, how they came about, and the deal Google got because of its promise to be, well, Zuckerberg was throwing all kinds of money at that company. Like, I think was it a Canadian company or no? They were Canadian, weren't they? That company that came
I'm
up
not
with
sure.
the basically all the algorithms that we're seeing today that Chat GPT is, evolved from.
Oh, there's a guy hitting up at the University of Toronto
That's
who
right. That's right. That
neural
was his
network.
name.
Yeah, yeah. That's the guy you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly right. And the story is when they brought that to market, Zuckerberg was offering him a lot of money, but Zuckerberg he wouldn't promise not to weaponize it. So even though he was offering a lot more money than Google, they were like, we already decided we're not going to sell to anyone who doesn't promise, who write on the dotted line that they will never use this in the military or sell it to the military. Which it's questionable what has happened since anyway with Google, and some of the things that they've done with these algorithms is questionable. And they're working with the government either way. So I don't know. Yeah. But
The other thing is like the horse has left the barn, and
yeah,
it's not open AI and Google are not the only people, and Microsoft. They're not the only people who can make these algorithms. I mean,
no.
there are people all over the world making them. There was a story, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about some Stanford people, and they wrote a program to emulate ChatGPT 3.5. Cost them
Mm-hmm.
$600 to do it.
Wow.
If they can do it, you could bet
Yeah.
Russia and Iran and North Korea and Israel, the United States, France, Germany, everybody would be doing it.
I
And
mean, it's
just there'd
just
be no
scary.
guardrails on what it's
It.
used for.
I saw a thing. I read the article in Reuters actually, and I don't know if they use this word AI, and it's like bird shit. It's everywhere. And
You know?
they really should start to specify whether they're speaking about these kind of algorithms or actual AI. But I know that on an experiment that these scientists fed this thing a bunch of. They said they fed the programmer the AI, and they asked it to come up with I don't know how many new solutions for biochemical warfare, and it came up with I think something like 87 new formulas. And these guys published the results to show that this program
Oh my
worked. And I think someone was like, hey, morons,
God.
take down the recipe for the next apocalypse. We're really excited that you
Yeah,
decided to do this little thought experiment, but maybe it's a bad idea to leave that public, with
yeah.
what's going on in the world today. But you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing that we can do this, but why aren't we asking it to come up with 50 cures for cancer? And you write about this. I know you talk about when IBM's Watson was hired to cure cancer. What
Totally flawed.
this is the way that this technology should be used, to serve mankind,
Yeah,
not to end up making us servants of it, which is kind of what's
yeah.
been happening.
One of the things I say is that one of the costs of all this, they said with, I think it was a former Facebook executive, said the best minds of my generation are trying to figure out how to get you to click on an ad. And now I would say the best minds of, not the best minds, but really smart people are spending a lot of time trying to create a program that'll talk BS with you.
Yeah.
What a waste of time. They could be doing, they could be curing cancer or doing something useful. And instead they're trying to figure out how to make a unreliable text generator, which has
How to make
pretty
it
much
seem
useless.
more reliable and conversational,
More reliable when in fact is not reliable.
Yeah.
I've argued that we ought to use the word, instead of artificial intelligence, fake intelligence,
Yeah.
because it is pretending to be intelligent when it's not. Like, what is human intelligence? We have critical thinking skills. I mean, we can understand things, we can project things, we can use information from one domain to apply it in a different domain. We can do logical reasoning, and these compute text generators don't do any of that. I mean, they don't even try to. They don't even try to distinguish between truth and falsity. They don't try to figure out logical arguments. They can put together words of some other logical argument that somebody else has made in the past,
Right.
but coming up with their own logical argument. And so I tested it, for example, I don't know if this is a Sloan article you saw, but I gave it some critical thinking questions from some of my classes that I teach, and it totally bombed.
Yeah.
Because you ask it to do something novel, critical thinking, which is not in its database, and it has no idea what to do.
Yeah. It's
So
not going to,
it's not really
intelligence.
It's not intelligence.
No, it's not. It's not. Whatever it is, you can't call this intelligent. I mean, it's a buzzword. It's like
It's mimicry.
It's a way to sell what your new program does. It's lame and it's deceiving if you ask me. But hey, it sells. It works. Nobody has put the kibosh on that yet. But I know you agree with
a
me.
big problem.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. I don't believe AI is ever going to replace the human brain, and I just don't. I think you share that opinion with me, but you're one of the few people who I've found who is knowledgeable, who's I think more along my thinking. Everyone else thinks that, oh yeah, this is it.
There's smart people who agree with you. One of them is Doug Hofstadter, who was there at the beginning, and I think he was in his 30s, and he wrote a book about Gödel, the eternal something, and he won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize, and set him up for life. And he's at the University of Indiana, and I think he has positions in 8 different departments, but he doesn't teach any courses. All he does is work with grad students on AI.
Oh wow!
And just plugging away. But he's trying to figure out how to actually get real intelligence. And it is just so damn hard to do.
Yeah.
But what he has said is, in principle, there's no reason why computers can't someday be intelligent.
Yeah.
But it won't be in his lifetime or our kids' lifetime or our grandkids' lifetime. And it won't happen by generating text.
Yeah.
It's only going to happen if we can figure out how in the heck the human brain does all the marvelous things it does. And
it's exactly right. I mean, even the algorithms that we got now that we think are so sophisticated, we only got them because we actually got the computers to start to imitate the neural network that we find in the brain. And the little advancement we've had is,
it's a very bad imitation, though.
Yeah, it is.
The brain is absolutely astonishing in what it does. You think about how these image recognition programs where they try and identify a wagon or something, and they're fed billions of pictures of wagons, and then you show it a new picture, and it might get it right or might get it wrong.
Yeah.
And some of the experiments I did, one program said it was a badminton racket, another one said it was a goalpost, another one said it was a business. And you change the color of the wagon, and it gives a different answer.
Wow.
Or you change the size of the wagon, it gives a different answer. Or the angle you see it from, it gives a different angle. Yeah. And yet somehow the human brain, when we're kids, we see a couple wagons, and our dad or our mom says, "That's
we
a
don't
wagon."
Even need to see a lot of them. One of them might do it.
Just a couple of them.
Yeah.
We know what the structural essence is. It's got wheels. It's got a rectangular thing to put stuff in. It's got a handle, and it can be made. It doesn't matter to us if it's made out of wood or metal or plastic. It doesn't matter if it's red or green or brown or white. We recognize it. Doesn't matter how long it is. We recognize it. Somehow the brain can do that just from seeing just a couple of them. And how in the heck does it do that?
It's amazing. It doesn't even
and we're a long way from understanding that.
No, we are.
And so
Go ahead.
What the computer programs do is they break the picture down into pixels, and they look for pixel patterns, and it works most of the time, but sometimes it just goes off the rails because looking at pixels is not enough.
No, it's not. I mean, I can't even.
That's not how we learn what a wagon is.
No, I mean it seems like the opposite would be the way to go. But I guess if you're a computer, you got to start with the pixels. But I've got your new book, and it's packed with a ton of information. And I like I was saying off the bat, I realized that our opinions on a lot of the things that we discuss here on the show, like on the show we discuss things like from the paranormal phenomenon and to big pharma. A lot of the things are opposites, right? But an underlying theme of your book, it matches up perfectly with a saying that we've adopted for my show, and that is question the answers. And you write about,
that's great,
an insidious problem that we're having throughout our scientific community, and you call it data torturing, which I love, and p hacking. And can you tell us the story of the pizza papers and explain the broader significance in terms of what's going on in scientific academia?
Yeah. So the scientific method was this big revolution where you're not supposed to accept the things just because your elders say it or somebody else says it, somebody in authority says it. You're supposed to actually go out and test the theories. And so the idea is you got some theory like vitamin C reduces the severity and incidence of the common cold. And so you go collect some data and you test that theory. And you see some people who take the placebo get sick. Some people take vitamin C get sick. There's a difference between them. And is that difference, can it be explained by chance, by the randomization, or is it too large to be explained by chance? And this great British guy, statistician, Ronald Fisher, said, if there's less than a 5% chance that it would happen by chance alone, by the random sampling, then it is statistically significant. And he said he prefers to disregard anything that's not statistically significant. And so that set the benchmark there. And scientists are really, really smart. So they figured out ways to get below that 5% level. And one way is, it's called p-hacking because the p-value is the 5%. And so you p-hack to try and get your probability below 5%. And what you do is you torture the data. And so you take a big set of data. It doesn't give what you want. We'll divide it into male, female. Doesn't give what you want. Divide it by age, divide it by race, divide it by geography, divide it by occupation. And eventually you'll find something by luck alone that has a p-value below 0.05. And then you pretend that's what you're looking for in the first place. So there's this guy, the piece of papers, this guy Brian Wansink up at Cornell, and he's written books translated in I think a couple hundred languages, and his motto is the best diet is one you don't know you're on. And so he has these little life hacks for losing weight, like serve smaller portions of food, serve it on smaller plates, serve it on earth tone plates. all these things you might think are silly, but he's done. And so his pizza papers was he had some people go to a all you can eat pizza place and record all the data they could find. The people at the different tables, how many people there were, what sex they were, approximately what age they were, what things they got when they went to the pizza bar, how many drinks, how many pieces of pizza, how much salad, all of this stuff. And then he got a graduate student to analyze the data and try and find p-values below 0.05. And she came back and said she couldn't do it. And he said, don't give up. You hardly ever get it the first time around. We need to squeeze some blood from this rock. So divide the data by type, the type of people, the age of the people, the stuff they took, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he ended up at the end with one of his conclusions was, I think his men eat 73% more pizza when they dine with a woman.
Wow.
It's stuff like that. But then he wrote on his blog. He had a blog he wrote, the graduate student who wouldn't say no. And he lauded her for just dividing the data in a zillion different ways to try and get below that magic p-value of 0.05.
Wow.
And then other professors read that and they said, Brian, are you joking? That's not how science is done. That's p-hacking. That's data torturing. That's not how real science is done. And then people started looking at his other papers. And there were mathematical errors, there were misconceptions, there were inconsistencies. Like one set of data, I don't remember the exact numbers, but one set of data, he said he had 45 observations. Another paper using the same data, he said he had 54 observations, things like that. And they put together this website, the Wansink, I don't know what it was called, but the errors, all the errors that people found in his papers. And Cornell was forced to do an investigation, and they concluded that he had done nothing wrong. But then the evidence kept piling up, and I think it was New York Magazine wrote a big article about this famous food lab which had engaged in dodgy science, and Cornell had to reopen the investigation. And this time they decided he'd engaged in scientific misconduct, and he was forced to resign and leave the university.
Wow.
But that's that kind of stuff is done all the time. What's unusual about him is he bragged about it.
Yeah.
And so you don't know, like, did he not know it was a problem, or why is he boasting about p-hacking? And most people
maybe he was looking around at society and seeing how all the people with the most money were doing it. So he thought, hey, this must be what the people who are successful do. I mean, it seems like it's a very common practice. Unfortunately, there should be legislation and there should be, third-party overseers to prevent this thing from happening, particularly when you're talking about, food and medicine. But unfortunately,
so what happens is,
go ahead.
People publish these papers, and then somebody else tries to replicate them with fresh data and finds that it doesn't replicate because it was just a coincidence in the first place. And so that's called the replication crisis, because it's happening in all aspects of science, and it's undermining the faith that ordinary citizens have in scientists. That they tell you power poses work, and then they tell you they don't work. They tell you chocolate's bad for you, no, chocolate's good for you. Coffee's bad for you, no, coffee's good for you. And you lose weight if you serve food on smaller plates. No, you don't. And so all these things they tell us that turn out to be, we have to retract that. It undermines the credibility of scientists, because
it's a problem, and as society becomes more and more scientific centric, and they ask people more and more to treat science as, religion, or as religion once was treated anyway, to be a bit, let's say, dogmatic about what we understand and what we're going to embody. You have a big problem. You have a discrepancy, and we're still moving in that direction. And more and more science and more studies are being exposed for fraudulent and misconduct. And I'm like, well, first of all, let's just start with who's paying for the science, who's paying for the
Yeah, for
science.
sure.
I mean, if you just
For
start
sure.
there,
For
you
sure.
eliminate at
Yeah.
least half your problems. If you make it third party, truly,
Yeah.
at least you have a
Yeah.
shot at unbiased, non-tampered with results. But if you're making the corporations pay for their own science, hello,
Yeah.
you're not going
That
to pay
surprised me.
themselves out of business. I mean, this is just common
Yeah.
sense. But
Yeah.
we, yeah, we don't use a lot of
And
that anymore. Common sense.
the consequences are serious. I mean,
Yeah.
you got all these people who don't believe in vaccines, and not just the COVID vaccine, but other vaccines. And
And if
they say
anything, what they did with that vaccine has discredited and made people question even more than they were,
and so people
and
think
that's because
vaccines
they
cause
rushed.
autism,
And
and yeah,
yeah. And I can't say that I fault people for raising questions when they've been, duped and sleight of handed and misdirected and given, the people who are supposed to be monitoring false information are the ones providing it and then saying that they didn't. And
yeah,
it gets to be a very messy thing to try and clean up. You know what I mean? It's like one of those,
yeah,
once the eggs are broken, what are you going to do?
yeah.
You've shaken the faith.
Once the bell is rung,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, or maybe it is fortunate. Maybe something good will come of it. I don't know, but my dogs think so. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I propose is that graduate students in various fields like psychology or economics or whatever, that they should be required to try and replicate a famous paper. And if they replicate it and find that it was bogus, that's good. Also, it'll make people who write the papers think twice if they know somebody's going to go out and check up on them.
I love that, man. I love that.
Might be a little more careful,
I'm sure they would pass laws to keep that from going forward. They would move hell and high water to keep that. I mean, you're not even allowed to collect the rainwater. They don't want anyone doing any kind of testing on their testing. It's a big no-no these days. My God, but that would be amazing. I love that idea.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, so one of the things I really admire about the book is that you offer a set of practical solutions to some of the problems that you lay out. And first of all, in today's society, that takes a lot of guts. So I take my hat off to you. But I want to push back a little bit because you advocate for stricter algorithms, and we've been talking about algorithms and more fact checking and potential censorship. And a lot of the fact checking that we see is particularly at first algorithmic. They're using algorithms to flag certain things, and as the target of some of these ideological so-called independent fact checkers, I take a little bit of issue with this because you dismiss as conspiracy theory the idea that there might be nefarious intent, but given the facts that they've literally, these are the same people that own these, so you're asking corporations again to fund their own experiment, to monitor themselves. There's no accountability because they own these media outlets, right? And they're collaborating. We know they're collaborating. It keeps coming out. And so it's like the public is at a disadvantage is my concern. And like, so, and maybe your opinion on this has changed. I don't know, but I'm wondering how anyone can justify giving them more power, and they're looking for it and they're clamoring for it, especially like about issues that are going to be coming to the forefront. About the science of global warming and climate change, and they don't want there to be any more discussions, even as they insist that the climate is changing. Which I'm all for everything we have to do to clean up this planet, which is a big job, and we all have to do our part. But but I want it to be a discussion that is had between intelligent parties and not a dictatorship about what's done, because what's done is continually changing. But I'm just wondering if you still have that opinion, or don't you think censoring information is going to lead to more distrust, and we're trying to regain the trust?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things. And so I talk in the book about the conflict between freedom of speech and truth, and who's going to decide what is truth. And it's been a long battle in this. I talk about the Comstock laws in there, about laws against pornography, and some crazy man who went around the country throwing people in jail because they took photographs of nude women, and it's just bizarre. But it's been around for a long time. This conflict between telling lies to incite riots, or telling lies to crying fire in a crowded theater, or, like you said before, distributing formulas for making biochemical weapons, and yet you want freedom of speech. And so how do you do that? And we haven't figured out a way to do it. It's definitely a conflict. The other stuff I'm happier with, like the replication crisis, the p hacking, and the data mining, trying to figure out how to get scientists to clean up their acts by having other people try to reproduce their results. I'm good with that. But the conflict between freedom of speech and outright lying,
Yeah.
Who's going to be the arbitrator? What's a lie and what's truth?
I mean, I think we have to start trusting individuals to, I mean, obviously you need to keep an eye on things. And I'm not even, let's just take hate speech and all these things that are completely common sense off the table. They are not part of this discussion, but the free discourse of ideas that don't involve, anything that could be called insightful, if you're, I mean, like, but again, who draws the line? Because TikTok will delete your video if the word Nazi is used. So you can't talk history.
I don't use TikTok. So
I mean, I don't either. But I know. I mean, there is a Far Out with Faust account on TikTok, but it's not mine. It's my friend who we were talking to. But that I don't. He's like, oh, we got in trouble. I'm like, what was it? He was like, we said the word Hitler or Nazi. We're like, but I'm like, but it was historic. We were doing a historic video about the Germans. It wasn't. It wasn't propaganda, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And they said we violated their hate speech. No, we were trying to talk about World War II and the German economy before and during and after the war, and it was more of an educational video than anything. But we got deleted. And I'm like, so how do you draw the line? And I'm sure that's algorithmic. Again, they try to show like they have tight algorithms. Meanwhile, they're sending all the information to the CCP. But you roll with the punches when you do this. So it's like, I think we have to bring back a little bit of discernment and trust people more. I mean, the flat Earth movement has gained massive following in the past, but no one's concerned about that. Why? That is a belligerent false narrative that is being grown and grown. And you mean, I can't believe how many people there are now that I'm like, what are you going to do when commercial space travel becomes and your Aunt Nikki sends you a selfie, and in the background is the globe, and then all this controversy and fighting you've been doing is you going to accuse your Aunt Nikki of faking the photograph too?
Probably.
My God. But but see, something like that, we say, okay, well, they can believe what they want. It's harmless. But then you have people believing that Donald Trump is part of some Messiah movement or whatever, and that's a problem because he's a political figure. So we're going to delete that from the internet. People can believe the earth is flat, but they can't believe Donald Trump maybe has a secret agenda to save the world. You know what I mean? Like, who draws the line? So my thing is, you can't, there's too many biases and agendas at play. You have to keep the line, in the middle and not make decisions based on, well, that's dangerous, but if you believe that the government and indeed the whole world is hiding the fact that the earth is flat, you might be prone to do something stupid and dangerous. I don't know.
My book also mentions these surveys about, I can't remember the numbers, but 5 or 10% of the population believes that the government is run by alien reptiles.
No, they just act like it. They're not. I don't think they're actually. Oh man,
I've got a friend. I've got a friend who's a very prominent AI researcher. He says the idea of computers getting smarter than humans. Are computers getting smarter, or are humans getting dumber?
Yeah, that's the question. Because the discrepancy is going to grow as those two things grow further and further apart. But it seems like you have a kind of love-hate relationship with the internet, as I think many of us do. But you talk about how altruistic Google used to be, right? and I remember those days, man. I remember when Google used to go to Burning Man, and they were so cool, man. Everything was very academic, the way it was set up, and then I don't know what happened. I don't, with them, and why they decided that they should stop being what made them amazing. But
Yahoo,
what do you think went wrong?
Yahoo also was, I don't know, but I mean, they start off and they're talking about how there should be no ads, it should be totally free, and one of the problems they got to worry about was corporate advertising, and
to think that was a concern on Google's list. Oh my God!
Yeah. And now it's a solution. Yahoo also used to be a fun place, and you said these commercials, "Do you Yahoo?" and people yodeling and stuff.
Yeah.
And reality set in, and the greed set in. Who knows what it was?
I mean,
what is it? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. The World Wide Web. I remember when you had to steal your mom and dad's phone line. Well, for me, it was my mom and dad. For you, you probably already had a phone line, but be like, listen, the phone's going to be busy just like for a half hour. I'm really sorry. Okay. They're like, what? What's your grandmother's going to call? You're like, I won't be long. And then you're online. God, that's crazy. How far we've come in just 30 years. It's crazy.
Well, I love computers. I got several sons who work in the computer industry, and I use computers every day of my life. For statistical calculations, mathematical calculations, looking up facts. Used to be you want to get a fact, you have to go to the library.
Yeah.
And rummage through books, thumb through books, or look at microfiches, get headaches.
Yeah.
And now you can just go to Wikipedia and check a few other places, see if it's true or not. Or ChatGPT, and then check if it's true or not. It's really,
just take it with a grain of salt,
Yeah. Just check.
I mean, people, I create a lot of content on my channels and my platforms, and people are always like, where do you get your information? And I often have to tell them that I books. I have to go and find books, because a lot of the stuff I talk about is not exactly the most popular subjects. They're usually, some of them are the darker sides of American history that people would rather not hear about, what George Bush's grandfather, who he was friends with and what he was up to, and some of the, it's like people have this idea about America, but I think that it's important that we get familiar, at least on some level, with what America's really been up to, and that way we have a chance at righting the ship as we go forward, because there's a lot of things spiraling out of control, and it's a big surprise to a lot of people, and they think that it's all this unrelated thing, and it doesn't have to do with everything that's happened up until now, and it absolutely does. There are very few surprises, at least on some levels. To the public, everything seems random, and the housing bubble, the collapse, and I'm like, what? It's like, you forgot what a good loan. People just believe kind of anything that they're sold. Like, if you're selling oranges your whole life, and then you sell a whole year's worth that are completely rotten, don't you think you'd know you're going to get a little feedback about those oranges that following year when people start eating them? You absolutely know that. You don't sell a product that you're not aware of, and who's better at selling products than the corporate America? So it's people are just like, oh yes, we got in trouble with loans, and then they're mad that they bailed out the banks, and I'm like, y'all understand it's all the same people. It's the same people who made the loans. Of course, they're going to bail each other out. You know what I mean? And they're going to tell you that they had to, and that you have to pay for it, or else the whole world will collapse. That's what they do. It's just no accountability.
It's one of those freedom of speech paradoxes that the internet has made it possible for people like you to say things you wouldn't otherwise be able to get public notice of. I mean, otherwise, how are you going to get your message out? And the internet has made that possible, but it's also made the flat Earth people. It's possible for them to go out.
Grew their movement by the millions. My God!
And the internet has caused that. I mean, I said part of the irony I mentioned in my book is that tools created by scientists are used to undermine the credibility of science. And what is the internet? The internet was created by scientists to talk to each other and to run powerful programs. And now social media is unleashed this assault on science. And some of it is maybe justified, but some of it is like the flat Earth stuff with the reptilian government.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely nuts. And
no,
what do you think about the idea? What do you think about the idea that we never went to the moon? What do you think about that?
I think we definitely went to the moon. I just had
it's like 20% of the population thinks we didn't. And you go online, there's videos, there's
and so this is the thing, right? Like this is the thing, because they went, and the government does this so often, it just boggles my mind. But then what happens is people, because we live in this polarized, everything is either black or white. Nobody thinks in color anymore. And it's a shame, because the truth is usually somewhere in between, and I absolutely believe we went to the moon, because I remember, seeing moon rock and lunar dust, and people are like, oh, that was fake. I'm like, oh, it was really? Because they're making millions of dollars off it if it's fake. Nobody's going to analyze it. They'll analyze the worth of the cocaine, but not the moon dust before they pay $5 million for it. Give me a break. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. But I honestly believe that we went to the moon, but there was parts of it that they shot in a Hollywood studio, and they did get Kubrick to work on it. And because of that, everyone thinks that every part of the moon landing was fake. And I'm like, no, it's not mutually exclusive. That part could have been faked, and the other parts could be real. I mean, we see the footprints; they're still there. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing.
Well, like we said before,
there's a lot of things the government does that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, part of the problem with the internet is it puts us in these silos. And so you get into a flat Earth silo where you start looking up flat Earth videos, and they start sending you more and more stories and documentaries, articles. And so you start to believe it, that's the only reality. And then the other people believe round Earth, and they get round Earth stories, and they don't talk to each other. They're stuck in their little silos, and they both think the other side is nuts. And the internet has done that by looking at what they value engagement. Mm-hmm. Because if you're engaged, you're going to see the ads. And so if you believe in something, they're going to send you more of that stuff and more of that stuff and more of that stuff.
Absolutely.
To engage you and to hope you'll go out and buy a new pair of shoes or something.
Yeah. No, that's the
and so we're in our black and white silos. And like you say, there's no color. There's no blend.
That's why I keep the algorithms confused, or I try to. And if they start showing me stuff, I'm like, wait, come on, then I'll start to follow and like things that are completely opposite, maybe even what I'm aligned with right now. And I'm like, just to keep the algorithms from trying to pigeonhole me, keep me guessing.
Good for you. Good for you.
But then I'm like, why am I seeing this? Yeah, that's right. Because but
you saw that other thing.
Exactly. Or I liked something, or I hearted it. But in chapter 6 of chapter 6 of Distrust is called Most Medicines Disappoint, right? And this is a concept many of my listeners will agree with. But can you explain what you mean when you like from a statistical perspective?
It's part of that p hacking thing again, in that if you test when you set a 5% rule for statistical significance, that means if you test 20 worthless medicines, one of them will appear to be useful just by luck alone. And so the big pharmaceutical companies, or the small ones, whatever, or the researchers in the universities, it doesn't have to be in a private company, it could be in a university. They test 20 medications and one will show up statistically significant. And they test 400, there will be proportionally more. And then they go out and use it in the real world, and it disappoints because it was luck the first time around. The other thing is that you could do the p hacking type thing we talked about before. Like you try this medicine on a whole bunch of people and it doesn't work. Well, let's focus on the guys. Oh, it still doesn't work. Let's focus on the gals. Let's focus on people over 70, people over 80, people between 60 and 70. Let's focus on Black people. Let's focus on people in the United States. And eventually you find something that works, and then you go to market. It turns out it doesn't work. The other problem is that a little more subtle is that a lot of the laboratory experiments are artificial in the sense that you've got one person with one disease and you see if this medication does any good. But in the real world, people have lots of disease. They have more than one disease, and you don't know various combinations. And so you have 3 different diseases and you give a medication that might work for each of them, and then 3 of them together work for none of them. And so that problem's hard to get around because the scientists can't test all possible combinations of diseases.
Right.
So.
No, and the human body is so unique and individual. People are so, they have such a specific combination of things, even though we are obviously all alike in a lot of ways. Our individual physiology is widely varied.
That's right.
Some people thrive on
That's
blueberries.
exactly right.
And I think I heard Mike Tyson say once in an interview, he's like, if I eat blueberries, I'll fucking die. I was like, wow, that's serious.
Well, I've lived through morning blueberries. So.
Yeah, me too. I love blueberries.
And then you got the outright fraud, of course, which is not the general thing,
No.
like the Theranos thing.
Right.
I mean, just absolute fraud. And,
there's a
lot.
lot.
That's part of Silicon Valley type thing. Fake it till you make it. And so you think you have some great idea and you need to raise some money. So you overpromise, and then you hope that you'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Once you got the money, you hope you'll be able to create what you promised. And sometimes you just dig the hole deeper and deeper.
And deeper and deeper. Yep. So we see it so often. And then we wonder why there's the
shovel your way out of a hole
collapse, right? I mean, look at WeWork, like those people, they didn't even know what the hell they were selling, but they were getting so much money and doing it so well. They were like, just keep it up. We were like, what are you guys? I thought you were a tech company. No, actually they were a real estate company posing as a tech company.
Well, take it till you make it.
Yeah, that's it. And they did that, man.
And that, I think we talked about this before, but that's a problem with ChatGPT, is that it makes people think computers are smarter than us. And so all these entrepreneurs, quote entrepreneurs, are rushing out with, I'm going to use AI like ChatGPT or another large language model to make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So you need to invest in me. And they're going to raise a lot of money promising things that they can't deliver ultimately.
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT can't do what they're promising it's going to be able to do.
Yeah. Hopefully, well, look, that's
keep your wallet. Closed.
That's Darwinism in financials. People are going to give their money to whoever they decide to. It's, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't stop people who are not that intelligent from spending their money on things that are not that intelligent. That's their opportunity, hopefully, to learn for the next time, My God.
It was just a few years ago, I think it was 2019, that the American Advertising Association chose the advertising word of the year, AI.
Oh, there it is.
Yep. Just like during the dot-com bubble, you put .com at the end of your company's name and people thought you were a different company.
Yep.
And now you put AI as part of your name, or you say, I'm using AI, and people think you're quite different than what you
You're
really
cutting
are.
edge, the next big thing, right?
Cutting-
Like you have access to secrets. That's what they think. That
That's right.
somehow you're going to be dynamic in the way that you innovate your product and solution. And we're not there yet. You know what I mean, people are, but as far as I understand it, most people don't have access to AI that is. Now, I've heard that quantum computing and that there is AI that exists that does do some of that, but I don't think the public has access to it. I don't know when we will, considering the way our governments, keep things from us. But
I'm skeptical that quantum computing
yeah,
has done anything. The getting computers to be bigger and faster and more powerful doesn't solve the fundamental problem, which is how do you get computers to actually think like the human brain thinks? And
I don't
text generators.
I don't know if you can. I
mean,
don't.
getting big, fast computers
Yeah.
doesn't solve that fundamental conundrum, which is how in the heck does the human brain work? How do we get so smart?
Yeah.
How do we figure things out?
I'm with you. I've always said this, and I've scoffed. I mean, I've scoffed up until very recently at this notion that AI is going to take us over. I'm like, I can't even get AI to do my homework. I was like, well, I don't understand. We're worried about a takeover. And people, I talk to a lot of people who are, very respected into metaphysics, and they're like that. People project their own insecurity, and really we are the AI. We are the sentient consciousness gone rogue, destroying itself. That is us, and all these movies, Terminator 2, and it's all that is. We are projecting what we see that we're doing to ourselves onto this computer, and I'm like, damn, there's so much truth to that. We and think about the movies that we create. We create humans, and then we have a moral and often physical battle with that creation to save ourselves. I mean, if that doesn't say it all, I don't know what does. Art reflects life. That's it. That's what's going on. But I'm with you. I know you're an economist who you're not a fan of crypto. Is that because it reminds you too much of AI, or can you explain why that is?
No. I've been teaching investing and doing investing for 50 years now, and I'm what's called a value investor, which is you buy something that actually generates some kind of income.
Yeah.
And so you buy a stock, it pays dividends. You buy a bond, it pays coupons. You buy a house, it pays rent, or it saves you rent, which, whether you rent it or live in it. You buy a business, it yields profits. You buy a Bitcoin.
Yeah. This was my problem.
How are you going to make any money? Only
are they going to send me the coin? I was because I want to hold it, and people were like, no, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, I think I'm going to buy gold. Yeah. I understand.
Gold, unfortunately, the exact same thing. Warren Buffett's got this great analogy where you take all the gold in the world, you melt it into a cube. It's about 68 feet on the side. It fits inside a baseball field. Or you could take the value of the gold, $11 trillion, and you could buy $11 trillion. You could buy all the U.S. cropland, and you could also buy trillions of dollars worth of American companies that generate profits and dividends.
Yeah.
And if you hold that second one for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, you'll have billions and billions of dollars of income. The gold,
not going to.
It's still be very
reflective there.
He said you can fondle it, but it won't fondle you back.
That's true.
You get nothing out of it.
It's true. It only gets so warm when you hold it.
And so Bitcoin is just digital gold. It's you can make money if you could sell it to somebody else for a higher price than you paid. But as an investment, I'm going to hold it and cash the dividend checks, cash the coupons, cash the rent checks, cash the profits for my business. It's not a real investment. That's I'm not alone, obviously. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, they hate Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Munger said they ought to outlaw it because so many stupid people have.
I mean, I
don't know if you're one of those. Are you one of those people?
Well, I mean, I have I put some investment into
some crypto,
but just because I see that with the economy and the financial system in place, and I have a lot of problems with the banking system, specifically the central banks,
Yeah.
and the way that they do things, and what a cover it seems to be. Because if me and you tried to do that, they would arrest us and throw us in jail and say that we were like Bernie Madoff. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but the structure is the same. If we do it, we're Bernie Madoff, we're going to jail. The government hires the central bankers to do it. They do it, and they call it legal tender or whatever they call it. It's the Federal Reserve, and there's nothing federal about it. They're a private organization hired by the government who impersonate a federal agency. But the United States government has every right, according to our Constitution, to print its own money and loan it to itself with no interest if it wanted.
Yeah.
So why would we?
Yeah.
And we're taught not to ask these questions. We're not really taught much anything about it at all, but they'd rather us not know. But I'm like, wait a minute. So now we're $39 trillion in debt. And I'm like, in the back of the room with my hand up being like, how are we going to pay for that? But no one wants to think about that. No one wants to even contemplate how. And I'm like, you understand that it's never going to be paid for. $39 trillion. You could build a stairway to the sun and back, a physical stairway out of greenbacks. If you were to be able to print, you probably couldn't print all that money without using every tree on the planet. But if you could build a stairway to the sun and back with that much money. That's how much money 39 trillion is. People don't realize how much that is. But
so what are you doing with your crypto? Are you buying and selling things with it?
I bought some and I've been holding it, and I've watched it, well, I mean, when I bought it, it was a lot cheaper. My brother has, my twin actually, he started with, I think 300,000. He was up to 9 million. He started way before everyone else. So he was up to 9 million, and then the market crashed. And I think he's down to like 3 million, but from 300,000, over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a good investment. That's, it's still pretty
I was asking
solid. Yeah.
I was asking if you use it as currency. Like, do you actually buy pizza, buy cars?
Oh, I don't think he does. I mean, he's at least he was day trading.
Not very good as a.
I wouldn't. I'm like, I don't. That for me, I feel like it's like I'm reaching in my pocket. I don't know what I'm taking out, and I'm just like, oh, here you go. It's like I feel weird about it. People are like, you want to pay in Bitcoin? I'm like, no, because I have no idea what I'm giving you. But some people do.
So it doesn't work very well as a currency.
Yeah. But more and more people are taking it.
Doesn't work very well as a currency.
No, I mean, but the question is, what's going to happen when this, this system we have in place, if it starts to titter and fall apart, we got to have something in place, something that resembles a currency system if the central banks go under, because at any point in time, if people go for their money, the whole thing collapses. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. It's just like Bernie Madoff. If you watch that documentary or that movie, you understand that. Okay, as long as everyone decides they don't want what they are owed at the same time, everything's fine. We just have to hope that day never happens. But what happened the other day at SVB? Everyone decided they wanted their money at the same time. Yeah. So the bank went insolvent. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that was one bank. And it was Silicon Valley, and it was a lot of high, and they were, don't get me wrong, this bank was a nightmare in a lot of ways. A lot of the decisions they were making were terrible. But that's how fast it can happen. It's just scary, So I guess, I'm like, hopefully there are some people who are sitting around thinking about, okay, if something was to happen to the currency system in place, what are we going to do to crutch through into the next system? Because it's absolutely a conversation that should be had. And I know there's a lot of money in it not to have it. And I know that, as a country, we'll do just about anything not to have that conversation. But I think it should be had. And I think that,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't think Bitcoin is the solution.
maybe
The thing
not.
about Silicon Valley Bank was it was terribly mismanaged in terms
It
of
was, yeah.
the kinds of assets it had, and it was making the same mistakes that were made back in the savings and loan crisis back in the late '70s, where they had short term deposits and long term loans, and if interest rates go up, they get clobbered.
Yeah.
And they should have known that. I would absolutely should have known that they
They
were
had to
vulnerable
know
to
it. There's no way they
rising
didn't
interest
know it,
rates.
but they did it
Yeah,
anyway. And
they're
then
just too arrogant.
totally,
Yep.
so that's part of the
Yep.
problem. And the
Yep.
other part was, and this is the part that they're like, oh, pay no attention to that. There was a conversation that went on where the people decided to pull their money. They knew what would happen if they did, and they decided to do it anyway. They yanked their money out
Yep.
of the bank. And you're talking
Okay.
about some very big entities. And I'm just like, so
Yep.
why aren't we looking at who decided to do that? Because it could have been avoided, but they didn't want to avoid it. And that's why they paid
They
themselves
were
off before it collapsed. Notice the pattern.
the officers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the depositors, they were rightly worried about that $250,000 limit on
Yeah.
the maximum they were insured, and they had a lot of people in that bank with 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, and they wanted to get their money out before the bank collapsed. And of course, that just caused the collapse.
Yeah.
So it's
That,
one of those vicious circle things.
that's always the cycle, it seems. It's like, God, we humans do that so much. On our way to avoid calamity, we end up causing the exact calamity we are running like the Dickens to avoid.
Yeah.
It's like, when are we going to
Yep.
learn to take a breath and and maybe
There's a
wait,
theory.
sit it out? My God. So
There's a theory in economics called the law of unintended consequences. And so you do something that seems perfectly reasonable, and it turns out to be completely counterproductive. So
yeah,
the law of unintended consequences.
it goes for life too. um, so do you think that you can or you can't use algorithms to make money in the stock market?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, you can, same way you flip a coin to make money in the stock market. And it'll be by luck alone.
Yeah.
And the current algorithms, there's very few that have any sense. They're mostly based on coincidental correlations, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And there's a few that are actually used by smart people, but it's not the computer doing it. It's the smart people who are using the computer to analyze data to look for certain things that they think. And so, for one example is, if you got a small stock, very thinly traded, and you have one side of the stock, you have somebody buying, and the other side, you have lots of little people selling. If you could figure out when this person decides to buy, then you could take advantage of their ignorance. I mean, but that's not looking for correlations. That's sensible.
Yeah.
Or another one it's called front running. And so you put in an order to buy Apple stock at the current market price, and an algorithm sees your order, and before it can be executed, they go buy the stock and sell it to you at a slightly higher price. Okay? And it's a penny higher, or a tenth of a penny higher,
Yeah.
or a hundredth of a penny higher, and you hardly notice. But if it does that a lot,
Yeah.
to a lot of people,
To a billion
by the
people, all
end
of a
of the
sudden.
day, they got real money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's different than like AI. I'm looking for correlations between stock prices and the price of tea in China or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Trump's tweets. One of the examples in the books is how you can find correlations between the words Trump chooses to tweet and the temperature in North Korea, the temperature in Moscow, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the price of tea in China. You can find all these correlations if you just look hard enough.
And
because he's got so many words.
Yeah, you totally could. And he's tweeted. He's got diarrhea of the tweet for so long. Just.
And so, if one out of every 20 tests will be statistically significant, even though it's coincidental, he's tweeted a lot more than 20 words.
Yeah.
and so you can find those correlations, which are just temporary, fleeting, coincidental, meaningless.
Yeah.
And yet, some people take them seriously.
Man, it's.
I mean, some people take those algorithms seriously.
They do, and this is why I think that why people need to read your book, because people need to be educated about this moving forward as we continue down this hard line of science. And like you said, this line that we're walking with, quote, misinformation, when they're telling us that things are one way, and we know that there's so many ways that they could have presented this information to us, that is not based in realistic effects and what we're actually experiencing. And so many examples come to mind, and I don't want to get too controversial, because YouTube is no longer a place to do that. You can talk about flat Earth, but you can try and convince the rest of the world that the Earth is flat. But if you want to talk about things like, the global Earth, which has weather patterns and climate, along with some other things, you could get in trouble these days, and they're going to continue. Unfortunately, I think making that more into a religion than a scientific discussion. And I have my own very conspiratorial theories about why that is, but I think you can expect to see it. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, but I think YouTube announced that they're no longer going to allow channels that promote something that is against the current science of climate change. And I'm like, what? But the climate is changing. The discussion has to change, doesn't it? I mean, it's like if we said that the Earth is warming, and then we realize that, okay, it's not, but the damage we're causing is actually causing it to do this. If you've outlawed everyone who is telling you that the Earth isn't warming, it's actually cooling because of the same problem, then you've just silenced, a voice that you're going to need to understand as you try and fix the problem. You shouldn't be blocking out the sun to cool the temperatures if things are cooling, but yet you're ignoring the science that is telling you that, because you're calling it whatever. You've censored it. And that's my problem with the censorship regime that's been popping up everywhere. It's like too much. Like, what are we, North Korea? Are we? Do you want us to believe that our president is some kind of pharaoh like royalty next? I mean, good luck with that, with our options these days.
Censorship, free speech is a real quagmire.
Yeah,
there's no easy solution.
No, it's got to be kind of hands-on, I think. But do you see all this stuff with the Space Force and this ongoing discussion now we're now having with Congress is being briefed, and of course they're going to need more money for whatever it is. I'm sure that it'll be an invisible threat that they need more money to fight. In the grand scheme of things, I have a feeling that's what this drip disclosure has been about. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you believe that they're hiding something? Do you believe that this is all dog and pony show? Like, what do you believe about the whole disclosure movement?
I have no information about any of that.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. But do you have an opinion?
No, I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
Oh, so in 2017,
so
UFOs, the Pentagon saying that they're actively investigating UFOs now, and how that's been a total about face from the previous 50 years of nothing to see. Their UFOs don't exist, and if you say they do, you're crazy. The whole agenda changed.
Yeah, I know very little about that. I know that there've been a lot of UFOs that were not UFOs.
Yeah,
like the crop circles in England was these two hoaxsters. These two pranksters confessed to doing it. And I know that a lot of that stuff is bogus, but I don't know if there's any real reality there.
Yeah,
there's no way for me to know or you to know, right?
There's a lot of bogus stuff going on, but I think there's a lot of real stuff going on too that they'd rather people not talk about or discuss, because I have my own theories about it, but they've been sitting on things a long time, and it's money. I mean, it's control and money. It's the biggest reason why I'll never believe in the conspiracy theory that the Earth is flat is that there's no money in it. Why would anyone bother to hide that? I mean, if I'm going to tell you the reason why I think that the United States government is sitting on recovered UFOs and that technology, I'm going to explain to you exactly why. I'm talking about a $1 trillion, maybe quadrillion dollar industry that would not be in place if they allowed that information to come forth. And that's because that technology would have made basically all energy free. That we wouldn't need fossil fuels. We wouldn't need gas. We've been using gasoline for 100 years now. Oh, this is the best we can do? Are we supposed to believe that? I mean, a new iPhone comes out every other day. Computers continue to astonish us, but gasoline, same as the last 100 years. And then electric cars, like wait a minute, electric cars came out before gasoline vehicles. Remember? Ford came out with an electric vehicle, and then he got together with his buddies, and they were like, we're going gasoline. Put that electric, we'll dust that off in 100 years, pal. And we're supposed to believe that's new. I'm like, wait, how is electric new? And Elon Musk, who continues to dust off 100-year-old technology and make it look like new and make it do fun stuff. Yeah. Like, look, my rocket can go back and forth and up and down. I'm like, it's a rocket, dude. It's burning. I can't see the sky anymore. It's burned so much fuel. Like, if you want to impress me, make something that doesn't use technology that's 100 years old. Yeah, I mean, anyway, that's my spiel. But my friend, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad that you made some time for me and my listeners. And we're going to put a link in a video description to your website and where people can find your book. There'll be a link there, and really appreciate your time. It was a great conversation.
And vice versa.
Thank you, my friend.
It was great talking with you.
I'm glad we got the computer to work. Stupid computers.
Oh my God. Computers are great, except when they aren't.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Bye.